She closed her eyes. That was what finally broke King Dorian Ashcroft. The Omega woman lay against the twisted roots of the ancient oak, her breathing shallow, her hands trembling as dark red blood soaked into the grass beneath her. When she saw him approach, tall and armored in battle-worn steel, she did not scream. She did not fight. She simply shut her eyes, certain he would kill her. Across the ruined valley of Thornhaven, fires burned low, painting the broken village in flickers of red and ash. Destroyed homes littered the landscape like the bones of the dead. The battle had ended hours ago, or maybe days. Time felt meaningless after survival became the only goal. Dorian stopped a few steps away from her. He had seen fear before. He had caused it too. Every Alpha King had, whether they admitted it or not. But this was different. This was surrender so complete, it felt sacred. Slowly, he removed his helmet. Cold evening air hit his face, sharp and clean. His dark hair was damp with sweat. His eyes, ice blue and usually hard, softened with something he couldn't name. He looked less like a monster now, more like a tired man who had seen too much. "I'm not going to kill you," he said. Her eyes remained closed. Dorian exhaled through his nose. Yeah, nobody ever believes that part. The Omega woman was young, even sitting broken against the tree. Perhaps 22. Long auburn hair matted with dirt and blood. Her kind, the wolf-blessed Omegas, were rare across the kingdoms. Gentle healers, fierce when protecting others, and absolutely terrified of Alpha Kings. For good reason. History had not been kind. Dorian knelt, keeping his hands visible. "You're bleeding out. If I wanted you dead, I'd just wait." That made her eyes flutter open. They were green, forest green, and filled with disbelief. "You speak," she whispered. "Yeah, we do that sometimes." Her gaze dropped to the crest on his armor. The wolf's head of Ashcroft. The symbol that had burned villages, conquered territories, crushed rebellions. She swallowed hard. Why? That single word carried centuries of fear. Why didn't he kill her? Why hadn't he finished the job? Why was an Alpha King kneeling instead of standing over her body? Dorian reached into his pack and pulled out a vial of healing tincture. Rare, expensive, reserved for royalty. "Because," he said, "today's been bad enough." She flinched when he leaned closer, muscles tensing. But she didn't run. She didn't scream. She just watched him with the quiet dread of someone who had already accepted death. The tincture worked quickly, sealing her wound with a warm glow. The color returned to her face slightly. Her breathing slowed. She stared at him as if he had rewritten the laws of nature. "You spare me," she said slowly. "Alpha Kings do not spare." Dorian shrugged. "We do. Just not when we're scared." Silence settled between them, heavy but no longer sharp. "My name is Dorian," he said. "You?" After a pause, she answered, "Alara." "Well, Alara," he said, standing and offering his hand. "Looks like we're both still alive. That alone should scare the kingdom." She hesitated. Then she took his hand. High above Thornhaven, hidden in the ruins of the watchtower, eyes watched. Scouts from the rival packs recorded everything. The Alpha King removing his helmet, the medical aid, the hand extended instead of a blade. Across dozens of territories, witnesses would later replay this moment again and again, unable to understand it. This was not how Alpha Kings were supposed to behave, and that misunderstanding was about to change everything. Alara woke to silence. Not the sharp, threatening silence of a battlefield, but something deeper. Still, heavy. The kind that wrapped around the mind and made her wonder if she was still alive. Her eyes opened slowly. The ceiling above her was unfamiliar. Not the burning ruins of Thornhaven, but a pale stone ceiling hung with tapestries. Royal design, crude by Omega standards of comfort, but solid. Protective. She inhaled sharply and sat up. Pain flared along her side, but it was controlled, clean, treated. She was alive. That realization sent a ripple of unease through her chest. Alive in an Alpha King's stronghold. Her gaze snapped around the room. The space was large, furnished with dark wood and silver fixtures. Weapons lined one wall, neatly arranged. Books and maps cluttered another. Everything screamed power and strategy. And there, near a window overlooking the mountains, stood Dorian. He had his back to her, dressed in simple training clothes, now rather than armor. His broad shoulders carried visible tension as he stared out at the landscape. "You're awake," he said calmly, without turning around. Alara froze. He knew. He always knew. "How?" she asked. He glanced over his shoulder, one eyebrow raised. "Your heartbeat changed rhythm." "Of course. Alpha senses were excessive. You could have killed me while I slept," she said. "Yeah," he replied. "But that would have been rude." She studied him carefully now, no weapon drawn. His movements were relaxed but deliberate, like a predator choosing not to strike. "You are not what we were told," she said quietly. Dorian snorted. "Funny. We say the same thing about you." She swung her legs over the edge of the bed, testing her strength. Still weak, but improving. "You should be afraid," she said. "Already. No, that is not what I meant." She stood, steadying herself. "My people believe Alpha Kings are uncontrollable, violent beyond reason. A species that escalates every conflict until nothing remains." Dorian finally turned fully toward her. "And your people supported the rebellion," he said evenly. "Burned our supply lines, poisoned wells, killed children in their beds." Her glowing omega marks dimmed slightly. "We believed you would destroy us eventually," she said. "We chose to act first." Dorian stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a tired, bitter sound. "Yeah," he said. "That tracks too." Before she could respond, the room's torches flickered once, twice, then stabilized. Dorian's expression hardened instantly. "That's not good," he muttered. Alara felt it then, a subtle vibration in the air. A pulse, omega energy signatures. "They are searching," she said. "Who?" "My people." Dorian's jaw clenched. "Of course they are." He moved quickly now, crossing to a map table and activating a magical detection grid. Glowing markers showed search patterns passing dangerously close to the stronghold. "If they find me with you," Alara said, "they will assume interrogation or collaboration." "And that's bad, because?" "They will not hesitate to attack this region," she said. "Everyone included." Dorian stared at the map. Then he smiled. It was not a comforting smile. It was the kind Alphas wore when backed into a corner and deciding how loud to go. "Good," he said. She blinked. "Good?" "They brought searchers," he continued. "That means councils, messengers, observers." He tapped a few commands on the table. "Perfect." "What are you doing?" she asked. "Something stupid," he replied. "Which is usually our best move." Alara stepped closer, eyes widening as she recognized the magical array he was activating. "You cannot broadcast through that," she said. "Your energy is too raw." "Yeah, heard that before." The device hummed louder. Outside, distant howls echoed through the mountains. Dorian glanced at her. "Quick question. How much authority do you have?" "I am a healer of the council," she said. "My voice carries weight." "Perfect." Before she could protest, he activated the array. Across the territories, Omega councils lit up. A signal, impossible by all known methods, burst through their protective wards. Not an attack, an invitation. The observers froze as a new image appeared before them. Alara's face, behind her, unmistakably Alpha architecture. And beside her, an Alpha King. Alive, unrestrained, unafraid. Gasps rippled through council chambers across the realm. "This is Alara of the Omega Council," her voice echoed across the lands, steady despite her racing heart. "I am alive, and I am under the protection of Alpha King Dorian Ashcroft." Dorian leaned into view and waved. "Hi," he said. "We should talk." Silence, then chaos. Council members shouted, Leaders demanded answers. Defense wards powered up, then hesitated. No one had prepared for this. No one had prepared for an Alpha King who didn't act like a monster. Alara felt it then. The shift, the fracture. Fear was still there, but now so was doubt. And doubt, she realized, was the most dangerous weapon the Alphas had ever wielded. Far beyond the stronghold, unseen watchers recorded everything. This moment, this choice, this Alpha King. The kingdoms had begun watching the Alphas not as a threat, but as an unknown, and that terrified them more than war ever could. The silence after Dorian's wave lasted longer than anyone expected. Across the Omega councils, leaders stared at their scrying pools in disbelief. An Alpha King, alive, calm, standing beside one of their own, unrestrained, unbroken, unafraid. This was not how encounters with Alpha Kings ended. Alara could feel it through the open channel, the hesitation, the confusion, the fear trying to disguise itself as protocol. Dorian leaned back against the table, arms crossed like he was waiting for late guests instead of facing councils capable of mobilizing armies. "You're very quiet," he said. "That's usually when people are deciding whether to shoot me." An Omega elder finally stepped into view. Tall, silver-haired, her robes marked with ancient healing symbols. Her expression was rigid with controlled agitation. "Alpha," the elder said, voice clipped. "Release Alara immediately." Dorian tilted his head. "Nah." The elder's eyes narrowed. "This is not a negotiation." "That's where you're wrong," Dorian replied. "This is exactly that." Alara swallowed. She had faced healing councils before, but never like this. Never with the balance of power so unstable. "You are holding an Omega healer," the elder continued. "This is an act of war." Dorian shrugged. "Funny, I was thinking it was first aid." Murmurs rippled through the council channels. Alara realized something then. This was not just about her survival anymore. This was about control, about the image her people had built around Alpha Kings. And Dorian was tearing it apart with sarcasm and a smile. "Your people attacked our territories," Dorian said calmly. "You ran your plans. You knew we'd retaliate." "That does not excuse your brutality," the elder snapped. Dorian's expression changed. The humor drained away. "You want to talk brutality?" he asked quietly. "I grew up watching Omega healers refuse to treat wounded soldiers. I watched children die because your people decided we didn't deserve mercy." Alara felt her chest tighten. "You studied us like a problem," Dorian continued, "like a variable that needed removing. But here's the thing. You never understood the solution." He leaned closer to the magical array. "We don't stop when things get bad," he said. "We get creative." The elder raised a hand. "Enough. This transmission ends now." The feed began to destabilize. Alara stepped forward instinctively. "Wait!" Her voice cut through the channel like a blade. "I am not a prisoner," she said firmly, "and I am not under duress." Her people froze. "You chose to trust an Alpha King," the elder said slowly. "Do you understand the risk?" "Yes," she replied. "I also understand the cost of misunderstanding them." She glanced at Dorian. He met her gaze, surprised. "You fear Alphas because they escalate," she said, addressing the councils. "But escalation is not their strength." She took a breath. "Adaptation is." The elder hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Across the territories, observers began flagging this encounter. Independent witnesses, neutral kingdoms, even rival packs tuned in. Because something unprecedented was happening. An Alpha King wasn't winning by force. He was winning by refusing to behave, as expected. Dorian tapped the table behind him. The stronghold's walls flickered with defensive magic, revealing hidden systems. Shield harmonics, energy redirection, a patchwork defense grid built from both Alpha and Omega techniques. Alara's eyes widened. "You built this," she whispered. "Out of necessity," he said, "and stubbornness." The Omega Elder stared. "That structure should not function," she said. Dorian grinned. "You'd be amazed what works if you stop asking permission." The Elder's robes shimmered with agitation. "You are dangerous," she said. "Not because of your weapons, but because you are unpredictable." Dorian nodded. Finally, someone gets it. Alara felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. Her people had spent centuries refining control, perfecting outcomes, eliminating uncertainty. Alphas lived inside it. The channel cut abruptly. The stronghold fell quiet. Alara exhaled shakily. "They will not forget this," she said. "Good," Dorian replied. "Neither will anyone else." Moments later, alerts chimed across the detection grid. Incoming signals, not attacks, messages, questions, requests. Observers from neutral territories, fringe kingdoms, regions that had suffered quietly under both Alpha and Omega extremism. They were watching the Alphas differently now, not as monsters, as a variable no one could calculate. Alara turned to Dorian slowly. "You just changed the strategic balance of this region," she said. He shrugged. "All I did was help someone who needed it." "That is what frightens them," she said softly. He met her gaze. "That's what frightens us, too." Outside, the search parties pulled back, just slightly, enough to signal restraint. Across the kingdoms, analysts recorded a new term in their threat assessments. Not alpha aggression, not alpha warfare, but something far more unsettling. The alpha problem. Because how do you defeat a species that turns mercy into leverage and creativity into power? Alara looked at the mountains beyond the stronghold walls. For the first time in her life, she wondered, what if the alphas weren't the danger? What if they were the answer no one wanted? The first attack did not come from the Omegas. That was the part no one expected. A sharp explosion lit the edge of the valley, followed by a tremor that rattled the stronghold's foundations. Dorian was moving instantly, hands flying across the defensive grid. "That wasn't them," he muttered. Alara felt it too. The energy signature was wrong. Cruder, hotter, desperate. "Rogue pack," she said. "Or mercenaries." The map updated rapidly. 3 war bands had emerged from the northern forests, bearing no kingdom colors. "They saw the broadcast," Dorian said grimly. "They smelled opportunity." Across the territories, a fragile pause had formed around the Alphas. A moment of uncertainty. These rogues intended to break it. Warning bells rang. The stronghold shuddered as projectiles rained down outside. "Your defenses won't hold against numbers like that," Alara said. Dorian flashed her a tight smile. "Good thing I'm not trying to hold." He pulled a lever. The ground beneath them hummed, then shifted. Alara gasped as the stronghold's outer walls unfolded like mechanical wings, revealing buried fortifications beneath the mountain. "You hid this under a stronghold?" she asked. "People stop looking at foundations," Dorian replied. "Alphas learned that the hard way." The rogue packs fired again. This time the attacks bent, curved, slid harmlessly into defensive wards. Alara stared in disbelief. "You're redirecting kinetic force." "With engineering I don't fully understand," Dorian said, "and instincts I trust more than textbooks." Across nearby territories, detection spells spiked. Observers leaned forward. This was no longer a quiet anomaly. This was a statement. The rogue packs hesitated. That hesitation was fatal. A pulse rippled outward from the stronghold. Not destructive, but disruptive. Communication spells screamed. Weapon enchantments flickered. Dorian had turned defense into confusion. "What are you doing?" Alara whispered. "Showing them something," he said. "Alphas don't just fight back." The rogue leader's signal burst onto the channel, wild-eyed and furious. "You have no authority," the wolf shouted. "Stand down!" Dorian leaned toward the array. Authorities overrated. Then he did something no one expected. He opened the channel to everyone. All observers, all councils, all listening territories. "This is Dorian Ashcroft," he said simply. "I'm Alpha." The kingdoms listened. "You're watching because you're afraid," he continued. "You're wondering if we're monsters or miracles." The rogue packs began retreating. "Here's the truth," Dorian said. "We're neither." He glanced at Alara. "We're problem solvers." The final pulse disabled the rogue forces without killing a single wolf. They retreated, powerless but alive. The message was clear. Alphas could win without annihilation. Silence followed. Then something extraordinary happened. Omega search parties adjusted formations, not to attack, but to observe. Neutral kingdoms moved closer, not away. Alara's breath caught. "They're choosing restraint," she said. Dorian nodded. "That's the ripple effect." The stronghold lights dimmed as systems powered down. Outside, the valley quieted, but inside Alara, a storm raged. "You've made enemies," she said softly. "Always had those," Dorian replied. "You've also made allies." He met her gaze. "That part's new." A new transmission arrived, encrypted, high priority. Alara recognized the signature immediately. The Omega High Council, her people. The scrying pool shimmered to life, revealing multiple figures. Elders, more marked, their healing auras controlled, but tense. "Ilara," one spoke, "return immediately." She felt the weight of generations pressing down on her. Dorian said nothing. The choice was hers. She stepped closer to the pool. "I will return," she said, "but not alone." A ripple of shock passed through the council. "You would bring an Alpha into Omega Sanctuary?" another demanded. "Yes," she said firmly. "Because if we do not understand them now, someone else will. And they will not be kind." Dorian raised an eyebrow. "No pressure or anything." Alara allowed herself a faint smile. The council hesitated. Then, slowly, they agreed. The channel closed. Dorian exhaled. "Well, that's new. You are walking into the heart of a civilization that fears you," she said. He shrugged. "Story of my species." Outside, the stars shifted as distant territories repositioned. History was bending. Not because of a weapon, not because of conquest, but because an Alpha King refused to act small when the world expected fear. Alara looked at Dorian, this strange, stubborn, impossible Alpha. For the first time, she understood the real danger of the Alphas. They didn't just survive chaos. They thrived in it. And the kingdoms were about to find out what happened when Alphas stopped asking permission. The Omega Sanctuary did not burn. That alone shocked the territories. For centuries, every recorded Alpha approach to the sacred grounds had followed the same pattern. Overwhelming force, rigid conquest, absolute dominance. Their sanctuary, Moonvale Haven, was said to be untouchable. A valley wrapped in healing wards so dense that even hatred bent around them. And now an Alpha King was walking toward it. Dorian stood at the valley's entrance, hands at his sides, watching the sanctuary glow beneath the moonlight. Crystal spires rose from the earth like frozen moonbeams, pulsing softly with Omega energy. "Well," he said, "at least it's pretty." Alara stood beside him, her healing marks pulsing steadily. Calm on the outside, turmoil within. "You are the first Alpha ever permitted to enter here," she said. "Always nice to be first at something," he replied. They walked through the gates without incident. That too unsettled observers. No weapons drawn, no threats issued. Just an Alpha walking onto sacred ground. The council chamber was vast and luminous, its curved walls alive with flowing light. Omega elders watched from elevated platforms, their expressions unreadable. Dorian felt every eye on him. Fear, curiosity, calculation. He felt it, and did not shrink. "You stand before us unarmed," one elder said. "Habit," Dorian replied. "I find people listen better when I'm not pointing something at them." A ripple of discomfort passed through the chamber. Alara stepped forward. "He comes by invitation, and by choice." Why? Another demanded. Why involve yourself in our affairs? Dorian looked around the chamber slowly. Because you made us part of them, he said. You studied us, pushed us, tested us. He met their gazes one by one. And because running experiments without talking to the subjects is a terrible way to solve problems. Silence. The elders exchanged glances. You are dangerous, one said. Not because you are strong, but because you change outcomes. Dorian smiled faintly. Yeah, that's kind of our thing. An alarm chimed. External wards flared. A force was approaching. Not Omega, not Alpha. A rival kingdom. One that had watched the broadcasts. One that had decided the uncertainty surrounding the Alphas was a weakness to exploit. They intend to attack, Alara said. The council stiffened. Our defenses will hold, but you'll lose lives, resources, time, Dorian finished. He stepped forward. Or, he said, you let us help. An elder scoffed. Alphas, Dorian corrected. Plural. With a gesture, the chamber filled with magical images. Alpha territories, improvised defenses, soldiers, farmers, craftsmen, scholars turned strategists. Not warriors, people. We don't win by being bigger, Dorian said. We win by being everywhere, by adapting faster than you can plan. The rival force attacked, and the kingdoms watched as something unprecedented happened. Alpha signals lit up across territories, not unified by command, but by intent. Civilian defenders rerouted magic. Old mining operations became defensive positions. Communication networks rewrote themselves in real time. No central authority. Just cooperation. The incoming attack fractured, not destroyed, but absorbed. Energy dispersed, redirected, nullified through layers of Alpha improvisation and Omega precision working together. The rival force retreated. The battle ended before it truly began. The council stared, not at Alpha strength, but at Alpha method. You do not seek domination, an elder said slowly. No, Dorian replied. We seek survival with options. Alara felt something shift inside her. This was the moment. Not a victory. A redefinition. The kingdoms would remember this day not as the first time Alphas proved their strength, but the first time they proved restraint at scale. The council rose. We will revise our stance on the Alphas, the eldest declared. Not as a threat, but as partners. Dorian let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Good, he said. Because we're terrible enemies, but we're great neighbors. Later, as moonlight drifted through the sanctuary windows, Alara stood beside him. You changed everything, she said. He shook his head. No, I just didn't do what everyone expected. She looked at him, green eyes reflecting distant stars. That, she said softly, is what makes Alphas dangerous. Dorian smiled, and across the territories kingdoms updated their records. Alpha classification, unpredictable. Threat level, contextual. Strength, adaptive cooperation. And beneath it, a new note appeared. Do not assume fear defines them. They turn it into possibility. The kingdoms had expected monsters. Instead, they found something far more powerful. Alphas who chose what they became. And an Omega healer who closed her eyes expecting death, and opened them to find a future no one had imagined possible.